Hello everyone, I'm the Esper Brush. Welcome to another painting guide. I'm going to show you how to paint a couple non-metallic metals as well as pig skin and orc skin. There is a lot to cover, so let's grab a brush and jump into painting. I primed black, and we're going to start with a base coat of a mixture of Vallejo Games Sick Green and Citadel's Elysian Green. But before we continue on with the skin, let's get that messy mouth completed first, which we will coat with Citadel's Screamer Pink. We will then wash that with a thick lather of Citadel's Agrax Earthshade. Just get it all over in there, including over the teeth. We're then going to go back in with our Screamer Pink and rebuild the color on the tongue. If it was a larger maw, we would paint more of it, but it's pretty small mouth, so we're just going to get that tongue. Then we're going to take some AK 3rd Gen beige and add it to our Screamer Pink, about a 75-25 mixture, and highlight that tongue. We'll then do the same thing with a brighter skin tone. I use 2 thin coats Elven Skin. Once again, you'll make a mixture of about 75% to 25% of that Elven Skin, and then you'll highlight the tongue, leaving a little bit of that highlight that you already made with that beige color. And then finally, you can take some of your pure Elven Skin, no mixture, and just do a couple dot highlights to finish off that tongue. Afterwards, we'll paint the teeth, and we'll do a coat of 2 thin coats Ivory Tusk. And then you can wash it all over with Citadel's Seraphim Sepia. Afterwards, we'll return to the Ivory Tusk and start to reapply it to the teeth. Once again, you want to have some of that area where you shaded down with the sepia showing. That way you'll have a nice contrast and a nice color to show that those teeth aren't very healthy. And then you can finish off the teeth with a final highlight of Pro Acryl's Bright Ivory. Then we're going to return to our skin, and we're going to darken it down with a wash of Wyvern Green mixed with a tiny bit of Cuirass Leather from 2 thin coats. And you're going to thin it with some water and do a thumb test so you know you have the right consistency before you start applying it. Then we're going to take that handy dandy Screamer Pink, thin it down to a wash as well, and then apply it so we can get some warmth into the skin. Let's then return to our lovely mixtured base coat of Elysian Green and Sick Green and reapply it, leaving some of those shadowed areas for that nice contrast. Then we're going to move on to pure Elysian Green, and I've switched to a smaller brush to make sure I can get these details in very nicely. We're going to apply it delicately to highlight. We're then going to highlight with a mixture of 2 thin coats Dark Sun Yellow and Citadel's Skarsnik Green. Skarsnik Green is a desaturated green, and so by adding that yellow in there, we're going to add a little bit of saturation while keeping the nice tone of Skarsnik Green. And then we're going to do a final highlight of Pro Acryl's Bright Ivory and 2 thin coats Gung Ho Green. And these are going to be bright, so you want to make sure you are working very delicately and only adding a tiny bit, as a tiny bit will make a lot of contrast, which will make it pop. Alright, non-metallic metals are a bit of a boogeyman in the painter space. People think you have to be really skilled to do it, but I'm going to show you a pretty basic way on doing it, just by doing some very good layering. To start my red, I'm going to take 2 thin coats Amphora Red and start splotching it on in a stippling motion to start creating some texture. Two important things for NMM is texture as well as lighting, and so you need to decide where your light is coming from. And mine, because I already painted the head, is going to be from this direction. So we're going to focus our highlights towards where that light is coming from. So to highlight, we're going to start with Mephiston Red, and we're going to be applying it towards those edges where the light faces. But since we're going to be going so bright, we want to make sure that we're not just leaving everything pitch black. So cover as much as you can while leaving some of that contrast there, because the contrast is extremely important for making that metal look metallic. Additionally, I am also stippling to make a texture, which we are doing a beaten metal for an orc, so we want it textured. Next, I'm going to be glazing in some Tooth & Coat's Von Evil Purple, which is a bit of a black purple, and that will add some darkness to the metal as well as add some interesting color to make it a little bit more visually interesting. And if you want a smoother NMM, you'll be doing a lot of glazing down to the colors you're already highlighting. And NMM is not really easy step by step like I'm showing you. There's a lot of back and forth as you go. Now we're going to highlight with Evil Sun Scarlet, and this is very red, so it's going to add a lot of color to the metal. And once again, we'll want to make sure that we are focusing our highlighting towards where our light is going to hit, but also don't shy away from highlighting some of those edges that are not directly towards the light, just because light will also cast over those edges as well. Then we can mix in some Citadel Wild Rider Red, which is an orange red, so be careful with how much you add, and then start doing the same thing over and over again, but just applying less and less as you move to a brighter color. Then we can move on to pure Wild Rider Red, and as you can see, the contrast between it and what we have been previously doing is pretty intense. So you want to make sure you're doing very little of it, especially since Wild Rider Red is so orange. We don't want to taint the armor an orange color, we just want to highlight. Then we move on to Tooth & Coat's Orange Flare, and we're going to do some dot highlighting towards the edge of our corners where the light is catching. And contrast is extremely important, and we're getting very, very bright with our colors. So once again, less is more, and it'll really make those colors pop, also make it seem metallic. We can then add some AK 3rd Gen Pastel Peach, and that's going to make the color extremely bright. So once again, only hit those edges where the sun is hitting. At this point, you don't have to hit the edges where the sun is not hitting. Those are already pretty bright from our other highlights, and we don't want to make sure that that light looks like it's coming from all around. It's just coming from where that sun is. And then you can finish it off with some dot highlights of pure Pastel Peach, and adding this very bright color really gives you contrast with your darkest colors that makes it look metallic and makes it look like the sun is hitting a piece of metal right where you have those highlights. Let's paint that axe, and I also use this formula for the metal parts of the armor as well as the chainmail. And we're going to start off with Tooth & Coat's Cold Corpse Blue, and really this axe is going to be a bit easier than the armor just because it's a flat surface and it's a little bit easier to understand. So once again, we're going to kind of splotch it on. We're going to leave a tiny bit black remaining as we paint. And then we will move up in the brightness by adding some wolf gray. And we're just kind of building up the color to a brighter color. You can also stipple in some dots in those black areas that you left to add a transition. We're going to continue on with pure wolf gray, and as we work, we're going to make some texture, and we're not only going to stipple to do that, we're also going to be adding in some tiny scratch lines, and to do that, you just do a really quick, very soft motion, and you can get that scratched look. And then you continue the mixture by adding Gravestone Blue into that color. Once again, painting NMM, you're going to be going back and forth a little bit, adding a little bit, taking back a little bit. Better painters than I will create very smooth blends, but I like this textured sort of look where we just kind of layer and layer to get that effect. Next, we paint just pure Gravestone Blue, and at this point I will admit that I do too many horizontal strokes along this axe blade. You really want to focus on vertical strokes because that's kind of the way the blade is. The horizontal strokes do kind of take away from the sharpness of that blade being a sharp edge. Next, we're going to add some ice yellow to our mixture, and that's going to make the color very bright. So at this point, we just want it along the edge, as well as a little bit of texture, but also a center focus in the middle of the axe where we want that light source to be hitting. We repeat that by adding in some white instead of ice yellow, which will make it a bit brighter and less saturated. This will boost the contrast even further before we take it onto pure white, which will be our next step. And we only want to do that in very small reserved amounts, just because, once again, we want it to contrast with the darker areas, and the more you add, the less it pops and looks metallic. And moving on to the last portion of the video, the pig. I base coated this in Skaven Blight Dinge already, and now we're going to be washing it with Skaven Blight Dinge mixed with 2 Thin Coats Scorched Earth to add a little bit of a darker, muddier tone. And once again, you'll do this by thinning it with water and testing the consistency on your thumb to make sure it is right where you want it to be. We're going to follow that up with a wash of Agrax Ursae, but only on the fur. And this will dry glossy, but that's okay. We're going to kill it down with some sealant at the end. Then we're going to rebuild our base color of Skaven Blight Dinge by just repainting it and leaving some of those darker, browner areas showing. This is a pretty practical way that I paint often. Base, wash, rebase, and then highlight. It's effective and easy. And speaking of that highlight, we're going to add some Decadent Purple from 2 Thin Coats and start to highlight. And as we highlight with this color, which is pretty bright and a little purple, we want to make sure we're doing it very softly and doing micro strokes to simulate fur. After that, you can just add in a little bit more of that Decadent Purple and continue highlighting the same way, just doing a little bit less. And once again, those micro strokes will be exceptionally important to create that texture. And to finish that off, we will use pure Decadent Purple and focus it at the top of your fur locks, as that's where the highlight will be. Next, we're going to move on to the fleshy bits, and to do that, we're just going to add some flesh tone into our mixture and start applying it to the nose, as well as under the eyes and in the ears. And with that previous mixture, it wasn't a very fleshy tone, which is fine. We just want to start adding that tint, and then we're going to be completing that tint in this step by glazing in some 2 Thin Coats Dwarven Skin and just kind of saturating it with that skin color. We also want to be hitting the bridge of the nose towards the snout just to get a blend in there that looks quite nice. Then we're going to take my favorite Screamer Pink, and once again, we're going to glaze it into these flesh areas just to add some warmth, which all skin does, because we all have that blood in ourselves, which is a warm material. Also hit the face and not just those fleshy bits, because that warmth is in our cheeks as well. Then we can move into highlight and sort of rebuild the color by mixing Screamer Pink with Dwarven Skin and just applying it towards the top of the area, as well as a little bit in that ear and towards the eyes. We're going to finish it off with a highlight of Elven Skin, and that is going to be along the edge, as well as kind of stippling and texturing it towards our edges just to make that cool texture. And here he is. Gorbad Ironclaw is finished, and this model is one of my favorite models in existence. I was super happy that I was able to get it, even though it wasn't perfect. I mean, you can see that I built my own boss pole, as well as there's some weird textures going on where whoever owned it put it together and didn't do a very good job. That's okay. He's here. He's in my hand. He's done. He's perfect. He is metal, so I did seal him with gloss sealant from Testers, followed by matte sealant from Testers as well, just to make sure he's really well protected. Metal miniatures do have a tendency to chip, so you want to make sure you're protecting it. Not only that, but that sealant also goes a long way in making sure all of your colors are united in their finish, and by that I mean glossy or not glossy. All of it will be the same once you add in a sealant. I hope you all liked watching this video. There was a lot in it, and I do apologize. I just wanted to include a lot of my painting process for this. I think it's one of my best paint jobs. I'm really happy with it. I hope you're happy with it. I hope you want to watch some more. If you do, like, subscribe, comment, do all those fun things, and I will catch you in the next one.